It's cold. Yeah, we're live, 7:21. I'm a little bit late. That's okay. It's all good. Hopefully everybody's got has a good night going. Tonight I want to talk about something cool, and that is, first of all, the thumbnail photo that I have up is Steve Brulee doing his carb whispering. That's what we call him at West Tech, the carb whisperer, doing his carb whispering on a dual quad tunnel ram big block Chevy, which is that's his that's his happy place. Big block and carbureted big blocks specifically, and then obviously if there's more than one carburetor, it's just twice as good. That's his thing. Everybody has the things that they like, and for him that's it. But tonight is not about so much about Steve, although I highly recommend, if you've never met the guy, he is like 17 different kinds of awesome. And I look back at these. The cool thing is that there are a couple of things. First of all, the cool thing is going back, just like anybody that has a scrapbook or whatever. Your parents go back and look at pictures of you when you were a kid, and that triggers memories for them, and that's all good stuff. And I get some of that too. I look at the books that I've done and the magazine stories I've done and photos now that I have on on file, like this one. And I go back and I look and I'm like, man, that was like 2003. That was a long time ago. But you get to go back and reminisce. And for me, I get to go through dyno results, which, after thousands and thousands of tests that you go back, and you used to be that I was really good about remembering every dyno result that I could recall it, but there's just too many. But you go back and look at it, you're like, oh, dude, I remember that test. Oh, wait. Oh, that's right. We ran a dual plane, and we ran a divided dual plane and an undivided one. And then we ran a tunnel ram, and then we ran a single plane. And then we ran the single plane. In this particular case, we ran the single plane with two different kind of cylinder heads. And then we ran a blower on it and ran not just one blower, we ran two different blowers. I'm like, oh, man, that's a lot of cool testing. You have a cool job. And so I can go back and that stuff will, when I'm not doing this anymore, whenever that is, when I'm 100 or 150 years old, I can go back and look at that stuff and sit on the porch and think, hey, look, I did that. That was awesome. And we can go back and look at all the dyno results and go, oh man, that was cool. That was a good time. That was the time that I argued with Steve. That would have been a lot of times back in the day. Much better now, which is very cool. But that's one of the cool things, is you can go back and videos do that, and pictures do that. And a lot of these came from before YouTube. So a lot of the stuff is photo based, because I was doing stuff for the magazine. So a lot of it's photo that was then put into video, which is cool. So the video will be there hopefully for a long time as well. But it's cool to go back and look at that. But one of the things I want to talk about is that's part of it is so make sure that when you're doing stuff, when you're going out with your buddies, when you're racing, when you're putting motors together, document it. Not just because you're trying to be famous, because you're trying to be somebody, whatever, none of that stuff. But you'll go back and you'll look at it just like you're going to be like your parents. You're going to go back and look at it and go, dude, when you're 80 or 90 or 100 or whatever, you're going to go back and go, man, I had this car that had a junkyard V8 in it that ran on gasoline and would run 860s, and your kids would be like, that's not even possible. Who used gasoline? And then you're going to show them the picture. Hey, look at this right here. It's a SN95 with a 5 junkyard 5.3 and a cam, a sloppy stage 2 and an S475 on it, and it did this. And here's proof of it. They're going to go, oh yeah, that's cool. My grandpa was really cool, or my dad was really cool, whatever. So you're going to be able to do that. That's the reason to document it, so that you have that and you can look at it and future generations can look at it, and all that's very important. But the cool thing is, and then one of the things I want to talk about and why I have the photo up of Brulee, is one of the cool things that I like about this being in this industry is that you get to meet a lot of very cool people. Not just like, if your dream was to meet Vic Edelbrock or Carol Shelby or whatever, or famous people, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that. I'm lucky to have met lots of like really, really good people that are not, they're good, not good because they're famous. In fact, most of the cases they're not. I've met lots of, Brulee is a perfect example of although Brulee is kind of famous because he's on TV now, but all of this stuff happened long before any of that was a reality. But guys like that you meet in the industry that you're like, man, that's a really good guy. So I got guys like that, guys like friends that I've met, like Bernie Van Hammond, the guy who's the crew chief for my when I was doing World Challenge, and just a guy I met at a Silver State race. That's what he is more than anything. I introduced him as a crew chief, but that was such a small sliver of what and meeting him and Jimmy, because they kind of went together when we used to go out to the Silver State, and we would drive out there and we'd sleep on his floor and crash at his house, and everybody would go out to the race together and stuff, and just meeting people like that, and that's worthwhile just all by itself. I mean, it's maybe some people think that it's cool to get to meet these, you get to go to the SEMA show and you're one of 1,000 people that got to shake hands with Mario Andretti because you waited in line for him, which definitely is worthwhile, by the way, especially for a guy like Mario Andretti, because he was and continues to be awesome. But not celebrities. Like I'm not going to go stand in line I would stand in line to meet Mario Andretti just because, so I could tell him that I want him to know that people out there recognize what he did and how amazing it was. But there are a lot of people that would be celebrities, whatever, TV or, whatever they are. And I wouldn't be waiting in line to meet them. And I wouldn't use the automotive industry as a chance to do that. But the average guy walking around, walk up to a guy who this is his first time that he's ever had a car at the SEMA show, or the first time that you meet a father and son, you meet him at a drag racing event or whatever at the track, and they're over there working on their car, and you go up and talk to them and you find out their story. That's what I like listening to. I would love it just to walk around my neighborhood and talk to people that I would love it if they all had their garages open and they all had, 70 Chevelles in there and some 62 Biscaynes or whatever, and just walk around and talk to those guys, because those guys are cool guys. I mean, there's some of them that are not. I mean, I get comments from lots of people that are not good guys, obviously, but that's part of the deal. But that's one or two guys of seemingly thousands of tens of thousands or whatever of people that are good people. And so you get to meet that kind of people. You get to meet guys that are the right kind of people, guys that you would want to be your friend, guys that you would want to befriend. And that's the cool thing about this industry. And maybe the other industries do that as well. You get to, hopefully meet people. But I think I would like to think that there is something special about car guys that make us better than everybody else, right? But Brulee is definitely one of those guys. And so if you are ever testing your stuff and you're going to West Tech, talk to Brulee, ask him some stories. There's always, that's the thing, is he's been doing this long enough that he has they've done lots of stuff, and him in particular, which is why I like him so much. He has done some really cool stuff. I'm lucky enough to have been friends with him for long enough that I get to hear a lot of the crazy stuff that he obviously is not going to tell the average person. And so that's just good stuff. And you guys everybody on the live feed right now, all of the people that are here all have cool stories. And everybody that's watching this after the live feed is over, you guys all have cool stories. So make sure that you document those cool stories. And so that you're not going to document all of them. I don't document all of them, but make sure you document the ones that are appropriate that you can tell your kids about, so that you can show them, what you did and that it was cool. And that way that when they become of age and they're able to do cool stuff, that, they also do that and document that, and all that stuff gets passed down. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because it's an important thing. We have lots to talk about with intake manifolds and valve covers. If we have a valve cover discussion, rocker arms and turbos and all that stuff, and all that's really good. But let's not forget, as much as I like the motors, the people are even better. So speaking of people, let's get to our people here. Let's get to our peeps. See what you guys got going on. See if tonight we're going to talk about UFOs, because I watched a cool UFO video today. Whether we're going to talk about Bigfoot, whether we're going to talk about Element 115, or the T-shirt that I asked my wife for, Hicks. So it's the only way to be sure. I just love it. 1 Liter Mafia is in the house. We're live. Personally, Squirrels is in the house. Aaron, Daryl, Anderson, everybody's here. 16 valve Scirocco. Bernie would be very proud. He was a big Scirocco owner, and I knew that I liked him when he was telling me the story about, well, so we got, my buddy and I went and bought a Scirocco, and the first thing that you do when you get a car is you got to go out and see how fast it goes. Right? And I'm like, dude, I'm totally with you. It doesn't matter. Like with my Chevy Sprint Turbo, I bought my Chevy Sprint Turbo and drove from Southern California out past Las Vegas so that I can make runs at Area 52 with our radar gun and stuff and find out what a stock Chevy Sprint would do. How fast would it go? I mean, as it turned out, it went like 105 miles an hour or whatever when I was doing my sprint log, when I was doing data logging, all of the stuff that was pertinent to what was happening with the Chevy Sprint Turbo. So, but that was one of the things. How fast would it go? So we wanted to find out how fast it would go. So you got to go out to a top secret area in Mexico, adjacent to Las Vegas somehow, where you could do, where there are no speed limits. So you got to go out and test it. And then while you're testing it, you have to monitor boost pressure and charge temperature and all the pertinent data to find out what's going on, what's happening. Why is it doing what it's doing? Why is it only going this fast? Why is it going really fast? What is it doing? And so you do that. But when my friend Bernie was telling me this story, he's like, yeah, he went and bought a 16 valve Scirocco. It was totally cool. I don't know if it was even a 16. It might not even have been. This might have been an 8 valve one. But at any rate, he said, yeah, we went and bought the Scirocco. So immediately we went out. We wanted to find out how fast it would go. Because then somebody else had some kind of old beat up V8 thing. So that they used to race them and stuff. And so it was, I knew that when he was telling me the story, I'm like, oh yeah, dude. Yeah, we're totally going to be best buds. That's awesome. Because anybody that wants to, as soon as you have a car, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You want to take it out and go, okay, what'll she do? I got to know. the big block whisperer. Yes, Brulee is definitely, he's a whole big block all the time. You already have a silver play button. Yes. Yeah, there's 200. I think there's 225,000 subscriptions right now, something like that. It's got to be close. Good evening. Best heads for a 383 small block. I have Holley Stealth Ram, Holley EFI. That's a good setup. I would, if you want the best heads, I would pick if it's a 383, something from Airflow Research is really good. But there's a lot of other good ones too. TrickFlow has some good ones. Dart, there are various people. And if you're looking for low buck ones, an Enforcer head from Airflow Research, Skip White stuff I'm told is good, although I haven't tested their stuff. But I think that they're using a similar casting. Camshaft just laying around the bookshelf. That's it. I need to make lamps out of the camshafts, or at least a table or something. One of those is a solid roller cam for an LS. So if anybody needs one of those, let me know. I'm sure you'll still be doing this when you're on the porch. That's it. No, don't argue with Steve. I know I've been down that road many times. Should be picking up my Hemi block at the machine shop. Nice. Is it a Gen 3 Hemi, or is it a Gen 2 Hemi, or a Gen 1 Hemi? All of those are good gens. Just got a Chevy 350 long block to rebuild. There are positive things about the scat rotating assembly. Yeah, the scat rotating assemblies work really well. We've used them a lot. Good evening, everyone waving hi from Ohio. Ohio. What's round on both ends and says hi in the middle? Obviously, Ohio. Richard, I have a question on cams. Have you tested any of the Texas Speed 228R cams? I don't think I have. I think the Texas Speed cam that I tested was like a 227 something. I'd have to go back and look. It was quite a while ago. Richard, what car did you run in the Silver State? My 5-liter Mustang. I'm original owner. It's a 88 5-liter LX notch, and ran at the Silver State 12 years in a row. So it won overall one year, averaging 167 miles an hour. Drag racing is my specialty. I grew up street racing. Very cool. A girl asked, let's see here. I need to see what his girl asked, and then I skipped through it here. My girl asked if I could have dinner with a celebrity and talk to. I told her it was you. You should set your sights a lot higher. I have to admit, I get to, because people that I know, I get to see, and I've met celebrities and stuff, that's just all great. And lots of them have turned out to be really nice. But the one that I thought was coolest was when I was running at the Long Beach Grand Prix. I was racing a Mustang, obviously, in the Bridgestone Supercar Series, and so I got to sit in a drivers meeting where all the drivers there, lots of IndyCar drivers and stuff, and Paul Newman was there because he was also racing for the Lotus team. They had him driving at the one of the Lotuses, and I thought that was cool because I've always liked him as an actor too. I thought he was fantastic. But I liked it even more that he was like a serious driver. I mean, the guy could get around even at the age that he was at when we did this. He was on the gas, and I just thought it was I thought that was kind of cool. Otherwise, meeting actors is just meeting somebody that does something that's kind of cool for a living, but not that they're like celebrity status for that kind of thing is not that big of a deal for me. You could tell them that you like their work if they do good work and stuff. And like Paul Newman, I thought was a fantastic actor. But other than that, that's not, to me, it's not a big deal meeting that kind of stuff. I got a chance to meet Dennis Anderson and Mike Rowe. They're both hella cool guys. Seem like, especially Mike, seems like it. I don't know Anderson that well, and I don't know Mike Rowe, but I just know of him. One boost question: does it matter if a turbo is bed mounted versus it being mounted under hood, or is it all in the combination? You can have remote mounted turbos. I have videos up on remote mounted turbos. Lots of guys do it, and it works. It works very well. Helio Castro Neves, we used to watch him a lot. He does seem like a good guy. Paul Tracy, I kind of heard both things about him. My buddy Bernie was a crew chief, and Paul drove for the Daytona prototype. And he said nothing but good things about Paul. And Paul was definitely on the gas, especially this one race where he just literally drove the wheels off of the car because it was down to the cords, and Paul was still, I'm going to win this thing. And so Bernie loved that fact about him. Little Al was driving this when I was driving the Long Beach Grand Prix. This was Little Al's playground, basically. I remember writing a story about that, about my adventure racing in the Mustang, because I was doing it for a Mustang magazine. But that was the name of the Long Beach Grand Prix. It was Little Al's playground because he had won so many times. And he was Paul, or Al Unser Jr. was definitely on the gas, and his dad too. What size injector do I need to make 1,000 horsepower Element 115? Well, actually, the Element 115 doesn't work as well on the early small block. It works better on the LS. So, and particularly Recport headed LSs for Element 115. I had an 82 Scirocco 16 valve with Callaway turbo. Nice. That is very cool. You don't see too many of those, and you didn't see too many of those even back in the day, but very, very cool. Just got home myself. This is warming my heart. It is. It's very cool. And that's how you know, like when I met Bernie and Jimmy, that they were, as a matter of fact, I have the photo of, see, here's that's the photo of when we met. So you can kind of see that. That's Bernie, and then Jimmy's right in the background, back behind the hood. That's at the Silver State. That's with my Mustang, my Notch. With the stickers all over it, because if you're a race car driver, you have to have stickers on your car. So that was when we met, and you can see if you look close in the background, you can see that early. That's a 71 240Z with the black wheels on. Those are probably Rikens, I think, back then. That's Jimmy's car, which I now have. So it's a circle of life kind of thing. But yeah, Jimmy's awesome. Bernie's a really good fabricator and one of the sharpest guys that I know. He knows everything about everything, and it's frustrating you don't try to have a discussion or a disagreement with him, because he's going to be right. Big block or no block or no go fast. So cool. Big blocks do work very well. LY6 6-liter with stock 823 casting heads, L3 intake, trick flow, track max cam. We ran it with stock springs and rockers, no issue. 500 horsepower. 560 lift would be kind of near the limit of those 550 lift springs. You might get away with that. I don't know what the actual coil bind clearance is. Will that make 500 horsepower? Yes. Maybe a little bit more than that. I think when we ran that, like an LY6 with a cam in it that was bigger than that, I think it was making 540. So 500 flywheel is not unrealistic. Switch to live chat. That's right. where all messages are visible. I wonder what does that change? Let's see. There we go. Okay. Switch to live. Richard, do you have a formula to use to figure intake exhaust duration split based on cylinder head intake to exhaust flow? That really isn't the thing. Thanks for getting these videos. You don't need to worry about that. As I've shown many times, the camshaft, a cathedral port and a rec port cam, the rec port cam will have more intake to exhaust split. Both of those cams work equally well with cylinder heads where one has a rec port head where it has a lot more intake flow than exhaust flow, or cathedral port that has less of that. Both of those cams do the same thing on both of those heads. So you shouldn't be concerned with that. Picked up my son and got his dinner, and now we're getting ready for bed. My work kind of doesn't stop. My son has autism, keeps me busy. Awesome. I mean, it's not awesome that he has autism, but that's awesome that you're taking care of him and that everything's hopefully going okay. Must have been a swap car. 16 valve didn't come out until 86 and a half. I got the chance to meet, Dennis Anderson. Gravedigger. Okay, that's who it is. Swap car, yep. Turbo took a dump. Then I had a Mark 1 with a 1.1. Oh, a Mark 1 with a 1.8 turbo 20 valve swap. That would be cool. 92 LX, closest I have to a notch as a convertible. Do you ever plan to test the skip white stuff? I'd like to, and just to see what it does. Just bought an RPM intake for $40. Nice. I don't know where all the energy comes from. That's good, though. You need to harness that. Famous people are still people. So the poll for tonight is, have you met a famous person? We're going to ask our community. Let's see. What year was the Steve pick in the thumbnail? I'm thinking it was 03, probably. Yeah, Paul Newman was. I like Paul Newman's Italian dressing. Really, that was good stuff. Nice. I've had a few non-turbo. I thought it was like zigging the rev limiter. Shockers are all dead. 91 Prelude 4-wheel steering. Those are good. A GSR swap. That's good. In your opinion, do you think the GT40 heads with some port work and larger valves can produce 450 horsepower on a mild 5-liter? You need to get them. Can you get them to flow more than 200? If you can get them to flow more than 200, preferably 230 or 240, then 450 horsepower would be possible. I know it's not Bernie Golick. Only thing with the remote mount turbos is don't go too big on the header. I'm thinking that's what you meant. And exhaust feeding a turbo because it'll affect spool time. You have never tested any heads from Brodex. Maybe that should be a question, because then the answer would be yes. I've tested many heads from Brodex. I have lots of videos up. The Dragon Slayer stuff I tested for Swalwick Chevy. Those videos are up right now. You can take a look at them. They work really well. Which isotope are you talking about? Element 115. It's right after Element 114. Paul Tracy is from Canada, yes. Turbo Smart is a Turbo Smart 60 millimeter electronic wastegate sufficient for 6,200 RPM 406. Yes, it is. Although I don't know why you'd pick the electronic one. That's really, really expensive. Brodex will make you any head for a small block you can afford. They have a lot of different ones. I've tested a lot of Brodex big block heads and a lot of Brodex small block heads, and Brodex Ford heads as well. So waiting to see the rest of the 8.1 stuff. I do want to see that. Just bought a 98 Chevy Blazer with a 4.3. Planning on a Buick 350. That will definitely be, or a 3800. Either one of those would definitely be other guys' stuff. I met Charlie Hutton. Have you ever met with David Weisard? Yeah, I just talked to him on the phone the other day. I've spoken to David many times. We get along very well. If your turbo gets too big, just mount it in a trailer behind you. If you need a trailer to mount your turbo, you're talking about some serious boost. The 60 millimeter size is fine for the wastegate. We are live. Dave, I think that's the other way around. I think I met you. Racers do count. Racers, anybody that you think is a celebrity. Now that I don't fit as well in small cars, I finally bought a Pilot Junk 87 Trans Am, a GTA, nice. Grand Theft Auto. Living in Southern California, it's almost impossible to not meet somebody who's famous. That's right. Just ask them; they'll tell you. Especially if they're like social media famous, they'll tell you. I'm on YouTube. That's really good. Met George W. Bush when he's running for president. Yep, he definitely would count. Racers do count, Dan. Kane, the wrestling star, lives in my hometown. Oh, great. Do you have the inner dampener on a valve spring can rub the valve guide? The inner spring ID is 938, and the guide is. I've never seen one that's that tight. Is it only going to rub down at the bottom? See, Larry, that's good. You're learning. You're patient. That's growth. Have you ever tested or played with the Cyclone 4.3? I've tested 4.3s, but not the Cyclone ones. Met Tony Stewart once. He's a really good driver too. Watched him refuse to autograph a 10-year-old boy's hat. That kid even had a Sharpie in his hand. Wow. A picture of myself with Bill Murray. I like his work. I've heard not great things about him, unfortunately, but I was a huge fan of Stripes and Caddyshack and all that. What motor do you want to do for the next big bang? I already have a K24 set up for that, and the 3800 and a big block that are all kind of ready to go. I also want to do another 5.3. I'm at the age and income level where I can finally purchase all my dream cars. Man, I wish I was there. That would be nice. But this YouTube thing is definitely going to allow me to purchase my McLaren F1 that I want, or at least the McLaren F1 book. Probably the book. When I was a kid, working for a hardware store in Las Vegas, I loaded 5 bags of concrete mix into the trunk of Robert Goulet. A Stutz Pontiac. Was it a Stutz Bearcat? Dream cars beat 80 and early's 90s. Yeah, those are good. I have a 80s Mustang and an 80s GLH. GLH S to make the GLH guys mad. At what point is an engine considered a big block? Well, anything at a 348, a 409, and 396, 366 and up actually on the big block stuff is actually a big block. All the other stuff is speculative. I always call a 455 Pontiac a big block, and probably a 421 a big block. The 400 I'm still on the fence about, but the Pontiac guys get mad when I do that. Same thing with the 455 Buick. I think and a 455 Olds. I think all of those are big blocks because they're all near 455 inches. A big block Ford 460, yes. 429, yes. The FE stuff gets iffy. A 427, a 428 FE, I think are big blocks, but is a 390? I mean, it's smaller than a 400. So do I have to count the 400? All of those things. That's all like internal infighting for me. Why are there's 61 thumbs up now? So get those thumbs up going. Growing up with John Madden's sons, I think famous people depends on your interest. I'd consider you famous to my crowd. I don't think that's the case. If you met me, you think it's kind of a jerk. George Carlin's wife went to my high school. Met the Lakers coach at Disneyland. Loaded Ernie Irvin's race car once. Never again. Met Waylon Jennings. That's awesome. Dan Gurney and many others from Kart, Indy Lights, and NASCAR. Dan Gurney would have been a guy that I would like to have met. David Visor has mentioned how he enjoys his conversations with you on his channel. I do. David and I have good conversations. He has the greatest stories because, you know, a guy that's been doing it for a really long time, and he's done lots of like really very like wild out there stuff. So I love hearing that. Like I love going to West Tech. The guy that owns West Tech was a carny, so he has he has the most amazing stories. Sometimes I like just wanting to grab them and sit them down and go, dude, just tell me anything that happened from back in the past. And it's always really, really cool. Got an 89 Daytona shell last week. Going to do a V8. Nice. Is it going to be a transverse mounted V8? Daryl, 10, 3/4 1, 383 LS1, trick flow 225, fast 102, 459 cam. What kind of power? I think I have something like that up there already. I would say that it's going to be, if it's all done right, that's kind of the combination that I was near 600 with. The compression might have been a little bit higher than that. I have a 5.3 liter LC9 that I just rebuilt with new springs and Truck Norris cam, but I want to boost it. The rings are factory spec. How far can I push it before it needs to tear it back and open ring? I would put ring gap in if you're going to put boost in it. I don't know how tight you put the ring gap at. Is it in the teens? Is it in the 20s? If it was in the 20s, I'd feel better. Met Willie T. Ribbs at the Kingsman Kart Club. I've raced at races because when I was doing World Challenge, we were a support series for Trans Am. So there were lots of Trans Am guys there. Gentilozzi and Ribbs was at a couple of the races that we were at. Tommy Kendall. Boris said it was just awesome because he drove for Hal Bear when I was driving with him, and Boris is just a really funny guy and a hell of a driver, and just he was a cool guy. But lots of those guys. Let's see, Sharp came later. Trying to think of some of the other Trans Am guys that were going on back then. I met these two guys that were probably more famous in Germany than here. Hans Metzger and Norbert. Panic fans always try to forget the small block division produced. Yeah, I met Rusty Wallace, Rick Mears would have been cool. He was kind of my go-to guy whenever we were watching the Indy 500 back in the day, back when it used to be kind of a big thing. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from anybody that likes Indy 500 now, but it's just a garbage race now. That's not true. But we used to watch it, you know, AJ Foyt and Rick Mears and all of these guys. All these legends of the industry, and I always liked Rick Mears because I liked his philosophy on driving. He's like, everybody goes out and wants to be the fastest guy and win the first couple laps. I'm like, that's not me. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be running with everybody. People are going to forget about me, and then with like 20 laps to go, we're going to start making stuff happen. And he was just cool and calculated, and was obviously a very good driver too. Walker Evans, that'd be cool. Colin McRae, yeah. World Rally. Richard, is a Trailblazer SS a direct swap for the LQ4 manifold? The manifold will just bolt right onto the heads, if that's what you mean. I'm talking about sensors and throttle body. I don't know. The Trailblazer SS is going to have a different intake manifold than the LQ4. The LQ4 is going to be a 3-bolt because that's just an early truck manifold. It's going to be a 3-bolt throttle body. Depending on what year it is, it could be either drive-by-wire or manual throttle body. The Trailblazer SS is going to be a 90-millimeter throttle body. It's going to be a 4-hole. It's going to be different. So those things are not going to be exactly the same. The fuel rail is different. Top ring for 5.3s at 18. Being in the 20s, I was wondering 450, but I want to punch a ring line and tear anything out. 18 seems a little tight. You probably could get away with it. Just if you run low boost, the problem is nobody ever stays at 6 or 7 pounds. Have you heard of motor coat or heat shield metal treatment oil additive? I've seen 10 to 20 horsepower using it. I would be real surprised if I ever saw anything that you add to oil that would change the power output by that much. We've tested a lot of Magic Snake oil things at West Tech and have never seen anything, because that would indicate that there's somehow that much power in either friction that's not being addressed by the oil? Um, or is it other kind of shielding that does it add like ring seal? Like how is it making power? Brock Lesnar, that's cool. Boris said used to show up for Winston Cup races at Sears Point in Watkins Glen. Yeah, because he is a road race guy. He's driven Cup or had driven Cup on at both of those events a couple of times. Richard, what small block Chevy combo would you build for a street and heavy vehicle using a turbo? It depends on what I was trying to do. Is a towing vehicle? Because even 7 to 10 pounds on a 350 with any kind of cylinder head on. If I was doing it cheap, I would use Vortec heads and a mild camshaft and then put a turbo on it. If I was doing something a little bit more racy, I would go with a cheap set of aluminum heads, like a Skip White or Enforcer Airflow Research head. Pulled my TO4B turbos off my 5.3 with an LS6 cam last week. Got my sloppy best cam and a VS 5855s. Should be here Friday. We'll get it running before you get the. Will I get it running before you get the GT3076 and GT35 test done? Probably so. I have an LS6, 405 horsepower, 5.7. If I gap rings, can I jam 1 bar of boost on it and get 800 horsepower? Or better to change the camshaft and springs. You can do both of those. That motor will take it will take 15 pounds, and if you put ring gap in it and the right injector and the right tune and all that, it will do that. There are better camshafts than that LS6 cam by a long ways that will help you make more power if that's what you want to do at any given boost level. How much do you gap the big bang motors? At least 30, and sometimes more than that. No way will additive add 10 horsepower. I just have never seen it. I want that to be the case. Like I want to make a pull. I want to make a bunch of pulls and have the motor be perfectly repeatable, running 530 oil or whatever we do, which is what we normally run and stuff. That seems to be a good kind of middle of the road kind of oil. And run that and have it be the oil temperature and air fuel and timing and have all those be perfectly stable and run it, and then pour this stuff in and get it up to the same temperature, run it again and have it be 10 horsepower more. I would love that to happen, but I haven't seen that happen yet. I lived in the same house as the guy who wrote the Kudor preference assessment test or whatever it is. He lived there 70 years before me. Chevy Chase mentioned it in Caddyshack. Nice. That's like an esoteric reference. Just wonder if you could please do an article on the comparison between flat tappet cams and roller camshafts, in particular the comparison between 50 lift and compression ratio compatibility. So why would there be a change in compression ratio compatibility with a different value at 50? That's what I would want to know. The roller, I talked about doing a roller tappet versus a flat tappet cam. I talked to David when we were talking about camshafts. We talked about doing that kind of test. We're just trying to figure out how we do it so that it's structured so it would be fair in any way possible. But I'm curious as to why you would think that the 50 number determines compression ratio compatibility. What aluminum stock heads are best to replace cast iron heads on a 6-liter? The ones that will make the most power if you want a stock head is any of the rec port heads. So an 823 or an 821, those will make the most power. If you want the best cathedral port head, which is what you're taking off of that 6-liter, then you want a 243 or a 799. And you can find them on marketplaces and other motors. Big Bang idea, 366 tall deck. See if it can hold 30 psi at its 4,000 RPM red line. It won't. Back in the day, we're pitted next to Kerry Earnhardt in the ARCA race. Dale Sr., Jr., and Kerry pushed our car into the pit garage after inadvertently blocking the doorway. I work in film and live events and see them all the time, treat them like anyone else. Took my daughter to her first festival when we were young. We were able to watch MCR next to some famous actors. Nice. $469 or $470 comp cam for power in a LS Pro Charger with AFR 225 heads. Do you have piston to valve clearance for both of those? 8V, what are you going to send me? Sammy the Bull. Yeah, so you thought Chevy Chase made that up, but that's a real thing. So somebody in the script did their homework. That's good. I like to see that. Compared to 87 octane pump gas tuning, how much more power would you get on E85 naturally aspirated with a stock 243 heads on a truck Norris cam? Well, it depends on how much timing you had to pull out for your 87 octane. I don't know what that is. Like on a street car, I don't know how much you'd be pulling out. My guess is, I don't know, 4 or 5 degrees probably. Pour it in plus 10 horsepower. I'd love to see that. What's expected putting a Victor Junior manifold on a 462 valve? If you're comparing it to I haven't run the Victor Junior on the 2 valve, so right off the bat, you need to know that going in because I did all my testing before that was even available. But typically, what happens on a single plane intake manifold, and I've run the Sullivan single plane intake manifolds on 5.4 and 4.64 valves, so we kind of have an idea. But every time we put a single plane intake manifold in place of the long runner deal, what typically happens is we lose power through a lot of the curve and pick up power at the very top end. So I'm hoping that you don't have stock cams in it, that you have cams and you can take advantage of where that manifold wants to rev and also head flow. I do off-the-wall crazy engine swaps. I put a 302 Ford into everything except a Chevy. So I'm currently looking for an S10. Nice. Wouldn't camshaft overlap determine what static compression ratio you can get away with? I think you're thinking about dynamic compression, but that's not the only determining factor. There are many other things. It's been said to add 30 degrees of duration timing to roller camshaft duration so that a 227 lift at 50 is looked at as a 257 lift at 50. Been told by multiple camshaft manufacturers. You're adding 30 degrees of duration timing to the roller camshaft's duration. So 227 lift at 50 is looked at as. So you're adding 30 thousandths lift is what you're doing at 50? So why are you doing that? Why is the effective lift different? Have you ever run 823 heads on a 383 stroker? No, because the 383 stroker is going to be a small bore. And the 823 heads, unless you notch the top of the bore, you're not going to be able to put those heads on it. So Rod, that's right. You've met Steve Brulee. He is famous. Jake the Snake, Macho Man, Superfly, Snuka. Nice. Is Slick 50, is that still a thing? Do you have any go-to cam for LS, for street LS boosted? No. The camshaft that you choose for your boosted LS, if it's a street car, should be determined. We went over this last night. You should forget about the fact that it's boosted. You should pick your camshaft for what you want the cam to do. Do you want to idle? Do you want it to drive? Do you want to use a stock converter? Do you want it to get good mileage? Do you want to have lots of chop? Do you want it to rev really high? What are the things you want out of the camshaft? And then pick the camshaft that does that, and then you're adding boost to that. 96 Ford truck 5.8 with 35s. Would you consider 456 or 448s coming from a 355? Well, again, it depends on application and what transmission do you have in this? Are you driving it daily? You have 35, so that's going to help with the gearing. I think a 456 from a 355 is a pretty big change. Recals in the house. Steve-O does count. That's right. To compare a flat tappet cam to a roller cam, you add 30 thousandths of lift to the roller cam. So why would we do that? Why wouldn't we make them even? How much of it at all did you balance the rotating assembly in your Civic Land Speed car? The 4 cylinders inherently balanced. All the rods weighed the same. All the pistons weighed the same. And so the crankshaft was already done. It was a factory steel, not a steel one. I take that back. We did run 2 of them. One of the combinations we ran the GSR crank, and then on the other one we ran the LS crank. So an 87.2 crank and then an 89 millimeter crank. But we didn't have to. You don't have to balance the whole assembly. Is E98 pointless or just good to use, blend down to 85 or lower? You're not going to get anything more out of E98 unless you're taking advantage of what E98 has to offer. So if are you running 1,000,000 pounds of boost and 1,000,000 to 1 compression and all that, where you need the extra octane? If you don't need it, if it's just a junkyard LS that you're running boost on, it's not really going to do anything. In fact, E85 versus E75 or E70 or 60 probably isn't worth all that much. Have you ever run a modular head shop cam? I have not. You're lucky that I read that first before I read the second part. Is 9.6 to 1 compression too much for 15 pounds of boost on 93? No, you're just going to have to take timing out of it. The test of the BTR Trek Norris versus NSR. Do you think the high lift one would make more power on a 6.2? Where was there virtually no change? There's about 7 horsepower on the 5.3. So I would expect a little more on the bigger motor that needs more camshaft where it might be able to take advantage of it. But not by a lot, because the thing that's making the power there is not the lift. it's all the rest of the things that are happening. So the lift is one thing that we're changing, and all of the other things are the same. So most of the things are the same. So most of the things are going to dictate the power level. And since they're the same, the power is very, very similar, except the little thing that we change will make a little change in power. Does increasing rocker ratio make a significant change on duration at 50? I don't ever remember. I don't remember degreeing that. Met Chuck Yeager. Chuck Yeager was the real deal. I don't know how he is as a person or how he was as a person, but he is. He did amazing stuff. In fact, I want my sons to watch The Right Stuff with me, just so that they know who Chuck Yeager is. The flat top, it is supposed to be quicker off the seat. Again, that's the thing that David and I talked about, is you're assuming the same specs, and it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to make the same specs on a flat tappet cam and a hydraulic cam. That's what we were talking about testing it. No matter what we do, someone's going to say, well, those aren't the same. So my suggestion is we need to try to make the lift and the duration and the lobe separation the same. And those are the big numbers that most people identify with. Guys that understand camshafts are going to go in and nitpick it. But honestly, I really don't care. Have you considered experimenting with compressed natural gas? I haven't ever done anything with it. Only 1,000, Dan? I thought it was 1,000,000 times, not to exaggerate. It is what has been said by multiple camshaft manufacturers here in Australia to get a direct comparison for each comparison ratio. Normal flat tappet cam for 11.5 to 1 compression would be 244 lift at 50. Okay, well then you should go by what they say. What I will tell you is that every time I've tested multiple camshafts at any compression ratio, the camshaft changes things. It's not linked to a specific compression ratio. I've run really, really big cams that call for 12.5 to 1 static compression. Huge cams, relatively speaking. And guess what? They work just fine. I've run really small cams with too much static compression. As long as we have the octane, it works. Agent James going 1.5 to 1.6 rocker will add 1 or 2 degrees at 50. Yeah, I don't think that was his 1 or 2 degrees of 50 duration. Oh, the measurement from 50 to 50? I thought he was talking about, will it change the number at 50? Jungle Pam, yeah. Richard, why do you end up with a higher octane than either sample when you mix leaded and unleaded gas? So if you mix 100 octane leaded and 100 octane unleaded, you get something higher than 100, a higher octane number? Does anybody have an answer to that? I don't see how the octane would change. LCXU, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying I'm just saying that you're trying to pick a camshaft for a compression ratio, and I don't think that that's really a thing. Would AFR 290 heads be too much on a 10.5 to 1 468 with a medium cam? No. And the 290, they'll support a lot more power than that, but they will work fine on that combination. Andrew, can you please tell me something about the Ford Motorsport B50 block? I don't know anything about that. Let's take a look. So I might be the wrong guy. Ford, it's a Sportsman block. So I've used Sportsman blocks before. That's an Sportsman block. Why is it showing me a picture of an O-ring? That's not a good photo. CJ Pony Cars, let's see what they have to say about it. Ford Racing short block Gen 3 Illuminator supercharged 5-liter Mustang 2018 to 2022. So is it a short block? It's only showing a block here. It says it's a low compression short block. 9.5 to 1. It's 5 liters. Has Molly pistons in it. Manley HP rods and a forged crankshaft. So it's something that you could use to build up a Coyote. Is that the one that you're talking about? Build up a super powerful Coyote. Low compression. I have a 331 AFR's Vortex. So I'm looking at the wrong B50 block. The B50 block that they're talking about. B50. Oh, maybe that's not it. Let's see what they say. No, we're not doing that. So no, I read the wrong one. And that's just a picture. That's telling me nothing. That is a 2-bolt Sportsman block. 302 HD Sportsman block, free shipping. Those are just pictures. I have used Sportsman block, so it's going to be stronger than a stock block, but not as strong as a dart block, I'm thinking. How much boost and power can these handle? Currently at 6 pounds. You're fine. You're well. We've run lots more than that on a stock block. Adding lead to an unleaded fuel causes a spike in octane, but but how are you adding octane? How are you getting more of something when you're have the equal amount of both of them? Oh, Keith Turk. Yeah, Keith is good people. So Casey, that's good to hear about the negative test. Had a nice chat with Steve Ballmer back in '87 for half hour. Now he's worth 75 billion. We didn't gain any power when NASCAR switched to roller cams. But what about all the frictional loss, Dan? Come on. Any experience with Flowtech heads? I haven't run Flowtech heads. Bob Glidden got mad at me for not driving down the return road fast enough. So was he late for something? There's an E90R on the market. They claim that has a mix of E93 and 112. Now we had racing E85, which is E85, and then the portion of gas that is mixed with it is higher octane gas. So that would change the octane of the total mix. And so instead of it being cheap 87 that somebody threw in there, it could be 100 or 112 or some kind of race gas. That would be better, assuming that you're at the limit of octane or that you need that. Two bolt SVO block from way back. Okay. Will 2-bolt Gen 350 Gen 1 handle 400 horsepower? Yes, without any problem at all. Bob Seeger, working on your night moves. The diameter flat tappet has a huge effect on valve acceleration. Yeah, that's what David and I were talking about. There's not any roller cam with any roller cam with that acceleration that will excel the valve as fast as a 1.6250 roller, like in the Olds Quad 4, most direct acting valve train. So, Dan, you met the Doritos guy? Precious McKenzie, pine size world champion weightlifter. Was he? That's not Pocket Hercules, right? Another odd one: fuel gasoline is cheaper regarding NOx gas than a 15% of gas. Ethanol, higher concentration of alcohol is less emissions, though. VOCs actually twice now that I think about it. You have coffee with Brian Schul, author and SR-71 pilot. Nice. Ever tried a Lenati bootlegger small buck Chevy cam? I don't know about the 554 lift, but I have run a bootlegger cam on a small buck Chevy before. That's one of was one of my first That was very early on when I was started doing videos, and I think I did it for the guys at Comp Cams or for Lenati. George C. Scott. Yep, the movie Patton was good. I watched it many times. Does leaded gas ruin a catalytic converter? Yes, it can. And oxygen sensors. Have you ever filled the block? I have not. Would you do it for a street strip 400 small block with a 671 and nitrous? Are you using all of the 671 and all of the nitrous? Then you probably should fill it. But if it's a daily driver, filling it is maybe going to cause some problems. Any tricks in not making a cam swap? Yeah, we drain the blocks. Who would you consider your hero engine builder? I don't know. I think it would have been cool to be around the Holman and Moody guys back when they were doing the Le Mans motors. I think I would have liked to have seen that. Derek from Vice Grip. Derek, I like Vice Grip Garage. Gene Berg, VW guy. That's right. Bruce McLaren. Build a performance Y block. Let's see what's going on with our poll here because I got to get rid of this. 73% are saying yes, that they've met famous people or a famous person. And we went over all of those, what that constitutes. Dan Gurney would have been cool. I have heard nothing but great things about him. Alan Millington in England, or it might have been cool to be there when Ilmore. It'd been cool to be around the shop when the Ilmore guys were building the IndyCar motor, the one that got outlawed, the pushrod motor. That'd have been cool to hear those guys sitting around giggling at what they were going to do, and then to see it come to fruition, which was kind of awesome. Like to bench race or have dinner or conversation with Gail Banks. He's one. I've met Gail a few times, and he's really nice. I'd like to have him on one of the when I start doing interviews, which I need to do. That's on my list of to do things for next year. Yeah, Hendricks counts. The Aussie Peter Brock. Yep, Smoky builds. Those kids in the room next door. Yeah. And on that note, it's time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I will see you all in the morning. Pow. I missed. See, that's what happens when you start playing games. It's all fun and games. Someone gets an eye poked out.